Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the UCM Podcast. This is Dr. Bill Davis, your host. And with me today is Dr. Jamie Cramer.
Hey. So happy to be here.
I'm excited to have you back on the podcast, Dr. Jamie. Just always love talking with you and hearing about your great practice in Michigan. For anybody out there that doesn't know you, Doc, please share a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your background and anything else you want to share.
Yeah, well, everybody, thanks for listening. I'm Dr. Jamie Cramer. I practice outside of Detroit. I'm about 30 minutes north of Detroit in Troy, Michigan. I'm in my 19th year of chiropractic practice. I graduated from Palmer College of Chiropractic. I actually started at Life, ended up transferring and having my experience with upper cervical care, specifically NUCA, and went to Palmer to continue that, and was able to practice and learn NUCA at Palmer. So very, very fortunate of that journey. And I've been practicing, again, 19 years. I started as an associate. I became an independent contractor, and then I opened my own clinic. And currently, right now, it is myself, and I have 3 other associate chiropractors, and we have a lot of fun helping a lot of people without drugs or surgery, because of my personal passion, I believe helps drive our success. And in my personal story, I actually became a chiropractor because it literally saved my life. I was 16. I was in a really, really bad car accident. And the car accident was my fault. So there was guilt around that as well. And it was a week after I turned 16, to be specific. Or got my license, I should say. Wow. And I totaled a car. And after I was in this auto accident, I started having migraine headaches. I started getting sick all the time. I was so unbelievably ill. I got numbness in my hands. And then I started vomiting almost daily for a number of years. Okay. And then I had horrible back pain. And every time I went to my doctor, because I grew up in more of an allopathic family, they said it kept giving me more and more drugs, and it wasn't really working that well. And I was actually going to school to become a pharmacist at the time. And a friend of mine said, you should try a chiropractor. And I go, I think they just do like the low back, not like I've got all these other problems. I mean, how is that going to help me? And I went to this chiropractor, and she was just on fire for chiropractic. And she explained to me, if your brain and your body aren't connected, you're not going to work right, and you're going to have problems. And nobody had ever said this to me by the time I was 19. And I go, that makes sense. And it wasn't even an upper cervical chiropractor, Bill.
Right.
Okay? Wasn't even. It was actually an activator doctor that was on fire. So I took the philosophy of chiropractic, and I was like, oh, well, this makes sense. And long story short, I ended up, if we can go down that road another way, but I found NUCA. It literally changed my life. It was the answer to my prayers. The sea parted in my world. It was amazing. And I went on my NUCA journey.
Yeah. Awesome. So had that incredible experience, changed your life, really got that. I mean, you got to meet a passionate chiropractor, right? Which is a blessing in of itself, because unfortunately there's a lot of chiropractors out there that aren't passionate, that don't have that fire, right? But you were able to interact with that person, and that began a fire within you, right? And that began your passion and purpose and the drive that you continue to have today, right?
I believe that. And it's so powerful. Like whenever myself or any one of our chiropractors in our clinic, which are just fantastic human beings and amazing chiropractors, when we meet people, we make sure we tell them about how the body works, and we make sure we tell them how they got into chiropractic, so that they can connect with that person and pretty much say in new terms now, but if your brain and your body aren't connected, it's not going to work right. And when you learn that the nervous system controls every other system in the body, including blah, 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 they go, oh, I've never heard that before. And information is high. We can get information anywhere. But that is different when you have someone face to face that is not on their phone. They're not distracted. You've got their undivided attention. So you could literally change their life how my life was changed. And we don't ever know that. And I took that information, and I learned early on how important your philosophy needs to be. And I took that even further, and I got my Legions of Chiropractic Philosophers I have the heart, the purple heart that you get from Palmer. And I actually even invested more in my philosophy. And I just think it's just so important that we understand our philosophy behind what we're doing, and then mirror that with our passion to truly help people is so important, because we're not physical therapists. We're not glorified anything else. We are chiropractors that get to do this work, and it's up to us to share it with others and do it in a very important way that's going to serve the person in front of us, so it can serve another person and another person and another person, and this can change our communities.
That's it. And that's what it's about, man. Don't be ashamed of who you are, right? Be proud of being a chiropractor. It's an amazing gift that you are, especially an upper cervical chiropractor, the impact you can make and change and save people's lives. And so, you mentioned, did an associate position. When did you open your own clinic? How long ago was that?
I opened my own clinic, and I seed, if you want to count that as part of my own clinic.
Sure.
In 2006. And then I did that for about a year and a half. And then I moved into technically my own space in 2007.
Gotcha. All
and
right.
It was end of 2007, November 15th to be specific.
Gotcha. All right. So 2007. So that's 18 years now this year. And so talk about, those early days. We on this podcast, we talk a lot about the practice growth stages and the different stages that you go through, and that initial stage of, being a solo practice, and even, breaking through some of those early barriers of, going over $20,000 per month and moving from, just surviving to thriving, and going into the next stages, and eventually hiring your first associate. But talk about, those first few years where you were in a solo practice.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that really were crucial for you to build the foundation that you were able to build upon now today, having 3 associates in your practice and being able to help so many more people?
Well, it's so important, first of all, to get good at your technique. I think it's super important to be engaged in your conferences that are associated to your technique. So if you're doing Blair, if you're doing Toggle, Nuka, whatever it may be, I think it's super important to make sure you get good at your craft. Okay. Yep. And another way to get really good at your craft is having a lot of people to put your hands on. Okay. So you can study it all you want, but if you can't translate what you've studied to a human, you can't do it. So you've got to get really good at your craft is number one. Okay. Number two is you got to get really good at communication, and you've got to communicate to your patients what I just said, just to even get them hooked. Like, this is, I'm a really big firm believer. We were actually just doing a doctor's training yesterday. We were actually going over health history information and what is the best way to do a health history. And we did some different scenarios, and we have a very plug and play way of doing it that is very customized to whoever's in front of you, and really sleuthing for that patient. So making sure that you know what their patient's problems are, and you can relate it back to a potential accident or injury that they might not have connected this to. So some type of trauma, and coming back to a solution in a very logical understanding for the patient to get it, and then deliver on the care. Okay. So that's number one. You got to know what you're doing. You need to know how to communicate it. And then when you deliver the goods, it's going to work. Like, I just expect my patients to get better. Like, I'm never, like, when patients come in and like, they'll be like, oh man, grumbling, that's going to be a really difficult case. I've heard some of my other chiropractors say, I just don't even think that way. I just expect they're going to get better.
Yeah.
So is it going to be on my timeline? Not always, right? Because the sixth principle is chiropractic takes time to heal the body. But I expect miracles, just like BJ says. I expect it. So that goes back to what you were saying, is having those confidence. And then when you can deliver the result and communicate, then you can generate more referrals. But in the very beginning, there is no doubt that I've only been taking referrals in my practice for about 10 years. Like, if someone calls from Google, I'm not going to see them in my practice. I've only been seeing referrals for over 10 years. I won't take a Facebook or anybody. It goes to another doctor in my clinic. And that's because of creating space for the people I already have.
Sure.
And but with that being said, is that anybody can really do that if you do those steps that I mentioned, because then you can turn it into a referral-based practice, and that's what everybody wants. And some people say they have a referral-based practice, but they're still not at the goals that they want to be at. So they are getting a lot of referrals, but they're not really hitting the full potential of what they could impact in their community.
Right.
So in the early days, you've got to do marketing as well. So, and whatever that marketing looks like to each individual is different. So those are some tools, and I had to work a lot and work long hours and work extra days and do a lot more things in the beginning. It's like a rocket. You got to put all that energy in the beginning to keep that rocket, to get that rocket launched, and then it gets easier as it goes up.
Sure. Yeah, and I wanted to go back to something you mentioned. I think it's such a crucial piece of the initial connection with a new patient, and it happens in the consultation. And you mentioned it. It's the connecting of past traumas to current symptoms.
Correct.
Right. If you miss that in that consult, your conversion of that person into a new patient or a long-term new patient or a referrer of others is going to dramatically diminish. Right. You have to get that and get it solid. And that's why it's a crucial milestone, right? Like if some people get too caught up in scripting and those types of things, but there are certain milestones that you've got to hit. And in that consultation, you have to get that box checked, right?
100%. And a couple of tips that I want to give people if they get someone, I've never had any accidents, I'm great, because we all have patients like that.
Yep.
Or I'm great, and they're 60 years old and they've never had an accident, right?
Sure.
And you're like, oh, that's probably not true, but you're not going to say that to the person like that, because that's just disrespectful.
Right.
So one of the tips I can give you is I'll say, I want you to think about, and let's say I'm talking to you, Bill, I'll say, hey, Bill, I want you to think about a time from when you were a little boy to today where you might have hit your head or something hit your head. You don't have to have stitches. You don't have to be hospitalized. Nothing has to be broken. Anything where it might have got you, like you fell out of a bunk bed or rolled off a bike, or you hit a cupboard really hard. And oftentimes that little bit of languaging, and I might use different examples depending on the person I'm talking to.
Yep.
I get something out of that 80 or more % of the time.
Yep.
And so then when I go through my consultation and I'm talking about the subluxation, and we're talking about the brain and the body needs to be connected. If the spine gets out of place, the brain and the body can't talk. And over time, it's a degenerative progressive problem. So let's say it's not a recent injury. So I'll say to them, and that's where the straw that can break the camel's back. That's why you woke up that one day, even though you had your injury 10 years ago, and now you can't turn your neck. Oh, that makes sense. It's like a cavity brewing in the spine. Oh, I get that. So
Exactly.
those are some really great tips that anybody in practice can start with in that consultation.
Yeah, and that's such a crucial one, Jamie. Right? Is you've got to, you can't just be like, hey, have you ever had any have you ever had any head or neck trauma in your past? Right? Like, no, you can't just ask that. You have to ask specific probing questions and leading questions that give them specific examples, right? Have you ever fallen off a swing set? Have you ever, have you ever had a sports injury? Have you ever been knocked unconscious? Have you ever lost conscious? Have you ever had a concussion? Right? When you give them these kinds of wording and think to stimulate their mind, give them triggers, right? It's a trigger.
Yeah.
You're trying to give them a trigger to remember, oh yes, this did happen. And that's such a crucial piece. You've got to get them to see, yeah, that did happen.
Yeah.
10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago.
Even if it's the consult of the person that had a bunch of injuries and then they had the problem just after the last injury, well, those other things did contribute to it leading up to it some way. Because that happened to my personal story when I was in that car accident. I had stitches in my head when I was a kid. I had stitches in my chin. I had other accidents. So it wasn't just that accident. That was the accident that broke the camel's back or broke the, for me.
Yep.
So leading that to a logical understanding of, oh, well, that's why that is. And this is more of a longer term issue that we're going to want to correct and then maintain.
That's it. Yeah. What I used to, always say is life is cumulative. Life is cumulative, right? It adds up. It builds up, right? Everything happens and it continues to build on what has happened before, right? So it's a crucial piece. So that's great. So that those initial initial years when you're in solo practice, really focusing in on your technique and your communication, those types of things. So then when you transitioned into the point where you hired your first associate, let's talk about that. Let's talk about, maybe some of the concerns you had, maybe some of the fears you had, maybe some of the, just excitement you have, because obviously there's a lot of doctors who never take that step, right? They stay in solo practice their entire careers. And so what was it at that point you got to, okay, your practice was essentially full, or it was close to full, where you were seeing as many patients as you could personally see, and you made that decision to bring on that first doctor into the practice. Talk about that.
Sure. I probably should have got an associate way earlier than I did. I worked really, really, really hard for a really long time that I probably didn't need to, now that I know the things that I know. I want to state that out. And there's a lot of people that think, oh, I just want to get an associate because I want to kick back. I want someone else to take it. That was not my motive. I was really, really busy and wanted to pee. That's all I wanted to do during my day. Get a drink of water and pee. Okay. And my husband would tease me all the time and say, you just need a Camel pack, and then we got to get something for your bladder. I was moving that much. So,
right.
And this was a lot of years ago when I first brought on associates, and I'm going to just share a number. I literally, by myself, I was actually pregnant at the time too. I saw 300 visits by myself in 3.5 days a week.
What?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Around that very regularly. That's what I was doing.
Dang.
So I just was on fire for chiropractic. And when I was pregnant, I was like, maybe I shouldn't do this much anymore. So I'm just out there to tell you, whatever you're seeing, if it's less than that, you're not pregnant, you're fine. Okay. That's all I wanted to say.
Wow.
Yeah. But that also came from Bill, like, I just had a passion and I just really wanted to help people. I mean, that drive didn't come from anything but that. Okay. And so what happened was I met my husband, we got married, we decided we wanted to start a family. And I was very busy, and again, for a long time. And I was like, well, how am I going to have my first baby my first biological child when I have this other baby called my practice? Like, how does it work? So to be honest with you, I needed an associate out of Essential because I wanted to take some time off when I had a child.
Sure.
And I ended up finding Dr. Natalie DeBrownie, who's thriving in Rochester, New York as a new chiropractor today. She came and interned with me from Palmer as a preceptor. And then she went on and she stayed with me for 3.5 years. She would have stayed longer if her family was closer. She was amazing. And she went back to New York. Now she's married, has a successful practice, a baby of her own. So we're just so happy for her. And she was the first one I hired as an associate. So she interned, and then I hired her really out of essentialness. And then from there, we grew Dr. DeBrownie. And when I came back from maternity leave, and then we grew so much that we hired another doctor, and he took over her practice. Or we had Dr. Paige Griggs. She lives in North Carolina now, and she's a stay-at-home mom, but she was with us a number of years, and lovely, fantastic. And then when she left, and then we hired another doctor. Yeah. So we just kept growing and in that system. And I think that I was so busy with my current practice, I had some spillage. And then on top of it, I had been doing a radio show. I did a radio show for 12 years. And that was a great name to get our name out and help our office grow. And then we started doing community outreach events, and I hired a community outreach assistant, and we would do massage events and spinal screenings and health fairs. And I had a marketing person as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So the practice was, I mean, obviously you were at more the capacity when you're seeing 300 patient visits a week. And so when you brought on that first associate, I mean, the issue wasn't a lack of patients, right? It was, you had plenty of patients, right? It was just a matter of you needed some capacity management, right? You needed some people that could help you do the work.
Yeah, I could pee.
Yeah, so you could pee. Yeah. And so as the practice continued to grow, and, even as you brought on, the second doctor, talk to me about, what sort of things that you've been doing, or what you were doing at that time, at least, to really help build the team. Because that's, obviously you mentioned before we even started talking how your associates now have been with you a long time. You have staff members who have been with you a long time. What are some of those things that you've really focused in on when it comes to building your team and really encouraging your team to stay long-term with you?
Well, I believe that it's a cultural answer to that. It's the culture that I believe that I've been able to cultivate and create in my office. And I've invested a lot in training. I have been training my team as a front desk and support people literally every Monday for all the years that I've ever had a team.
Yeah.
So we literally do a weekly team meeting that lasts about only 20, 25 minutes now. And then we do another training for 20, 25 minutes. And I think investing in the why we do things, the philosophy of why we do things. We share one of our patient testimonials every week to get everybody on the same page of why are we here? We literally say an affirmation before every single shift. And we also read a couple scriptures in my office as well, literally before every single shift and I've been doing that all my years. And I know those sound very basic, but they're not, because it's the little things over time add up. Yep. It's the Slight Edge kind of stuff. If anybody's read Slight Edge, it's a great book, by the way. It's just the little bit over time is going to help you succeed. And I believe that has helped. I've also always done a weekly doctor's training. I invest in my doctors heavily. I invest in my team heavily. One of the things we do is we have a CA Jeopardy, literally, and it goes do. And there's questions you've got to answer and daily doubles. And we do that once a quarter just to keep everybody on, how do we handle that question? How do you know that objection? How would you handle the scenario? What if this happens? And all of that stuff matters. So people are more and there's a gift card, as a winner. So it's just fun. And I do things like that with my doctors as well. We do a weekly doctor's training where we, 1 week we might work on adjusting, another week we might work on, we just talked about earlier in the podcast, we worked on how to go through a health history in the most logical way and how to swap some areas. So literally every week we are investing in my team. And then again, it goes back to why we're there, the philosophy and the vision. And we literally talk about our mission statement once a week as well.
Yeah. And it's, you said these seem like small things, but they are so crucial. And it's the kind of thing that we see all the time that doctors don't do, right? These are not things that take long time. They don't take you don't have to have some special set of skills. You need to just start doing it and start learning as you do it. But train your team, train your doctors, focus on your mission, continually go back to it, talk about your values, right? These are it's just basics, but it's what makes the difference between a practice like yours and a practice that's struggling to break $20,000 per month, right? It's these little things that add up when you do them week after week after week, right?
And it's easy not to do them, and it's easy to do them. So you pick. You pick. Or you could say it's hard to do them or it's hard not to do them. You pick your hard, right? So that's really what it breaks down to.
That's it. So let's talk about, even in the last, because what I love about you, I'd love to have you on the podcast is you're always growing, right? You're continuing to invest in the mission, continuing to grow the impact you're making on the community. And even in the last year or so, right, you've brought on another associate. So it's yourself and 3 associates, right? And so talk about that, as you now have 4 doctors in the practice and multiple staff members and team members. Has there been any challenges with kind of keeping everybody together, keeping everybody going in the same direction? What are some of the things that you may have noticed that maybe some additional challenges as the team has grown?
That's a great question. I would say that so to give you some backstory, so I've been there all the years. I have another associate that's been with me around 8, another almost 6, and then 1. So I feel like when you are doing, like I told you, like these weekly check-ins, I guess I didn't share this with you. I also do a weekly meeting with my doctors as well on where they're at, how they're doing, and keeping that pulse, I think prevents a lot of the challenges to come. And then they become like littler issues that can get addressed more quickly versus like a big issue. So I feel like that is part of it. And the other thing I do want to mention is like I've been working with a coach for a number of years, and I believe having a coach on my side. I work with Noel Lloyd at 5 Star Management. I've been working with him for 11 years. And I feel like having someone helping me with the binoculars to what's to come has really helped me with avoiding a lot of really big issues that I can say. I'm not saying we don't have any, but nothing's really striking me that's coming up. So that's been a challenge. We've recently did an expansion and a remodel in the last couple of years, anticipating growth. So we kind of like, again, I'm using my binoculars. We foresaw this, we planned for it, things like that. So,
yeah, no, that's great. And what you mentioned too is, again, it's a basic is having meetings, right? Like it's so often we talk to doctors and they're not having meetings, right? It's like, you're not having meetings with your team. You're not having meetings with your doctors. It's like you said, you don't have a meeting unless there's a problem, right? Unless things the wheels are coming off, and then you finally have a meeting. It's like, no, you have the meeting on a cadence, a consistent meeting, and then you catch these problems when they're small, or they never even become a problem because you're consistently talking about these things and keeping people focused on the mission, right?
So what I want to say to that, Bill, is 100%. You're right on it. What I call that is reactive chiropractic care. If that's how you're doing your business, that's what you're doing. You're reacting. You're just like the patient that only comes in when they're hurting. You don't want to do that. You want to be a preventative chiropractor that's going ahead of these and going through the prevention so you don't have to react to a big problem.
Okay? Practice what you preach, right?
Exactly. If you believe in lifetime chiropractic care, then let your patients know that. Maybe not on day 1, but along the way, because you don't want to get married before you date. But I think that's the big thing to this. And so you might be sitting there listening to this, doctors or students, and be like, well, I don't even know, what would I talk about at these meetings? What would I do at these meetings? I think that is probably what scares people a little bit too much. Or maybe they think, if I have a meeting, it's just going to be a complaining time. There's no complaining time in our meetings. It's, if you have an issue, then what how do you think we should resolve it? It's like a complaint with request for change almost. So that but if you have a structure to it, which is easy to do, you can AI everything almost anymore, but you could do that if you wanted. I have personal meeting structures. If anybody wanted to reach out to me, they could. I'd be happy to share. But you want to keep it concise. You want to keep wins and positivities to our meetings. So when I have a team meeting, everybody starts with a win for the week. When I have a doctor's meeting, everybody starts with a win for the week. So we're starting it off really positive, and then we're leading into what are our goals, what are our actions, where are we at on our progress, and if there's anything they need to do different to move forward. That's a little gist of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a great meeting resource kit on our website too. If you need a basic structure for either team meetings and one-on-one meetings, quarterly planning meetings, annual planning meetings, we got all that on there if you need that. But so I wanted to talk last thing here about your practice. Obviously it's phenomenal practice, helping tons of people in the community, and you've expanded. You've gone to a bigger single location practice rather than going to multiple locations. Yeah. Is there a reason why that you've made that decision? And for doctors maybe that are considering going to multiple locations, I'd love for you to talk about that.
Oh, for sure. Well, more locations is going to be more overhead. Yep. And that's also going to be more staff. So from a business perspective, it's just more overhead, also more problems. Okay. So what I would rather do is have more of a mothership practice. Yep. And where I strategically started my practice is very accessible by multiple highways. So I have so many people that travel in to see us, and we're in a great location to take care of lots of people. And I know people that are in remote areas that still have tons of people that come see them. So it all works out. Yep. So I would say that I am interested in having a really dynamic, great staff that I can meet with regularly. I'm not having to go between two practices. I'm not having to run two rents or light bills and phones and tech problems. I'm just not interested in it. It's just not my vibe. And I know that where I'm at, I have the capacity to grow probably even double what I'm currently at. Awesome. And I do have plans to continue to expand and to continue to add on more chiropractors in my current location, in my current area. We can open up more hours. So I think there's so many ways to expand an existing chiropractic office, even if you're limited on space, that you can change hours, you can change room locations. Maybe there's some money involved, but it's a more concise, controllable, in a positive way environment. I would just hate for somebody to get exposed to NUCA and it be a negative experience for them. And we have more quality control under one location.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
and I'm the only chiropractor. You know, some people are married to a chiropractor and they divide. That makes different sense.
Sure.
I'm the only chiropractor. So.
Yeah, I mean every situation is unique and different, and all that. But I love what you said. I love some of these reasons why you have focused in on a single location practice, because it's so true. I mean, it's so much easier to control the culture of your practice when it's all in one place, right? When you have multiple locations, you can't be in two places at once. Right. You don't know everything that's going on at that other practice all the time. Right. And so it's a lot more difficult to really have your hands around the culture of what's going on there and the quality of the experience, all those types of things. I mean, there is ways to do it. But as you said, I love, these are some things that you want to think about. If you're in this stage where you have multiple doctors in your practice and you're thinking, well, maybe I should just open a second office. There's a lot more to it than I'm just going to open a second office, right?
Well, and I'm here to say that, as chiropractors, we're not touching a fraction of our community. So the capacity for any community without moving is huge. Yeah. I mean, huge. I mean, so, and then once people really find out what you're doing, they're willing to take the time to drive to you too. So I know where I'm located, just in my city alone, I could be having so many more people affected. And not to mention all the people that drive in from all over. So I just think it's a mindset issue for people, and that they can also think that, oh, it's just going to be easier because I'll be able to reach a new clientele. Well, those are going to be low-hanging fruit that people just want to come to you because you're close or around the corner. And that might just come for a few visits and knock off anyway. So you're going to get more of the invested patient. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. Well, I appreciate so much you spending the time with us today, Doc. Is there anything else that you want to share before we wrap up for today?
Well, I want to thank you, Bill, for inviting me to come on, and everything that you are doing with the upper cervical marketing community and what you bring to upper cervical. I think it's just fantastic, and I'm honored to be on here. And then I'm hoping that today, that whoever may have listened to this, that you get something out of this and some value and something that you can take away and make upper cervical amazing and impact someone's life in a better way. And I'm always available if someone wants to reach out to me as well. I love to help in a lot of ways.
Awesome. Thank you, Doc. Appreciate you and your time and your passion. And as we always say on this podcast, go team upper cervical.